Video released by an Al-Qaeda-linked group in Mali suggests South African Stephen Magan and 5 other hostages are alive. Magan was abducted in November 2011 in Timbuktu, together with recently released Swedish national Johan Gustafsson. Yolanda Corky is someone who knows exactly what it's like to be a hostage. She was kidnapped with her husband by Al-Qaeda in May 2013 and released 558 days later. She joins us via Skype now to tell us about her experiences and how exactly this is likely to impact on others who've been through exactly the same experience. Yolanda, thank you so much for joining us this evening. You've come through a terrifying experience as a hostage in Yemen. Are you recovering from that?
Good afternoon. Yes, we recover slowly but surely, and recovery and healing is a choice as well. Some days it goes better and some days it's more difficult.
And one thing we don't perhaps consider is what a culture shock it must have been for you to be removed from circumstances that are so different to your own and kept there against your will for so long. What was that like, Yolanda?
Yes, I think in general, being a hostage is a very cruel situation because you are isolated from your loved ones. You are taken away from them. And we as humans, we've been created for relationships. We live in relationships, we grow up in relationships, we are educated. It's the key to shaping our identities. So being a hostage is one of the things that happens is you are isolated, and that whole identity, your relationships and everything that goes with that is placed on hold. You can't form meaningful relationships with the people, your captors, for instance. So it's really very difficult, and there's a sense of abandonment as well, and a terrible longing for being with your loved ones.
One thing we don't perhaps consider when we look at pictures of Stephen Magan and others, we think at least he looks well, he looks healthy. How accurate is that perception of outside observers like us?
Yes, it's really important that we, as public, when we look at a video like that, that we try not to analyze, but that we use that video as a reminder that we should be praying for the whole situation. To say that a hostage looks good is never true. There's no such thing as a hostage that looks good. Being a hostage is terrible. It's a horrible experience, and we on the outside, although we look at it and with good intentions, we say, oh, he's looking good. Actually, he's just crying out on that side, and that's the only way that we just see that small little bit that they edit and we're allowed to see.
But what keeps you sane and hopeful even while you're still being held hostage?
There's different things that keeps one sane, and every person is of course different. In our case, Pia and I helped each other, and our faith was a huge anchor. But we all have some sort of resource and resilience inside of us, and that's one of the things that we could pray for people that are hostages, that they will be reminded of the resilience that they have, or the resources and the creativity that they have inside of them to be able to cope. So each person has inside of themselves the ability to cope, and if they've been able to cope until now, then that's a very good sign.
And it's an interesting and important thing that you mentioned, because you were held with your husband. Stephen Magan has been held with Johan Gustafsson, who's just returned home. And the worry is that now that he no longer has this companion with him, that his energy, that his enthusiasm to survive will flag.
And in the time that we were kept, we became like one person. But it's not usually the case with hostages. While Pia was kept with an American, after I was released, the relationship was very much strained. So it depends on the type of hostages, the circumstances, and we can only really pray and hope that Stephen, and we should be thinking also about Shiraz Muhammad, who is a hostage in Syria right now, that they will find a way to continue holding out every day.
Of course, their families are now going through what your family initially went through and what you yourself went through once you were released and Pia was left behind. Can you give us some sense of what that's like, Yolanda?
I think it's really important for people to know that not only is the hostage a hostage, but the hostage family is in a very cruel and bizarre way a hostage as well. It's very strenuous for them. Life is no longer the same, and tastes differently, works differently, feels differently. The drive for tomorrow is, when will they come home?
What support do these families need to get through this?
Sorry, I could not hear the last. Of course, the closest families, just being on the same page as those families are right now. Supporting, we love you, what do you need? Come on, keep going. We're going to keep going with you. And tomorrow is a new day, a fresh start, and we keep going through tomorrow the same way until that day arrives where loved ones are embraced and everybody is at the same place again.
We know Stephen McGann and Shiraz Mohammed's families are clinging to the hope that they will be released at some point. What message do you have for those families as someone who's been through this and survived it?
I'm so cautious to give advice, but I could just say, keep going. It's worth it. Keep going. There's going to be a day when this finishes. And as a fellow South African, and I hope to hear the whole South Africa shout with me when I say this, we can just say, we love you. Keep going.
We all, of course, carry the hope as South Africans that both of our citizens will be returned safely to us. But of course, the reality is when you return to your family and to your friends, although they may want to empathize deeply with you, that's impossible because they have not lived through what you have and survived it. What do you need most from your family and friends when you get back home?
I think the first thing is that they would be able to go home without interference. Home is a very important place. It's a place where there's good memories, and even though it's a new home possibly for Stephen, or it's a known home for Shiraz, home gives that sense inside of one that there's something that's that safeness, that space of safeness, and then of course lots of acceptance and open ears and open hearts. And yeah, that's something that we as the public could also pray for, is the adjustment, because we often pray just for the negotiations and the release, but then we forget that there's life after the release, and we should pray for that adjustment back into society.
Yolanda Corky, so good talking to you this evening. Thank you so much for sharing those very intimate thoughts with us. Yolanda Corky, survivor of that hostage kidnapping in Yemen. More news after the break. Stay with us.